So the state has these two witnesses, Quindarrius Zachary and Kenneth Copeland. Those are the two witnesses. And I've been doing this long enough. They're horrible witnesses. They're liars. They have every reason to lie. They have every motivation to lie. They are inconsistent. They tell different stories every time they talk about the things they talk about. The state knows they're horrible witnesses. But here's what happens. In closing, the state says, they're not our witnesses. We didn't choose those witnesses. They're Shannon Stillwell's friends. He chose those witnesses. That's their line. They might not use it now because I already said it. But that's their line. But let's think about that for a second. That's not their witnesses? First of all, they're the ones that called them to the stand. But that's not their witnesses? Look at this indictment. 28 names. Quindarrius Zachary? Is he on this indictment? No. Kenneth Copeland? Is he on this indictment? No. Are any of us going to really sit here and pretend that if the state was really being honest about who to charge about the events in 2015, 2014, 2015, that Kenneth Copeland wouldn't be on that indictment? Kenneth Copeland was a one-man crime wave in 2014, 2015. Yet, he's not on this indictment. Quindarrius Zachary was a straw purchaser for guns. Quindarrius Zachary was right in the middle, the impetus for one of the overacts, the April 28th, 2015 shooting of houses. He's right in the middle of this. And they're not on the indictment? And we're supposed to pretend that the state aren't the ones that chose Kenneth Copeland and Quindarrius Zachary as their witnesses? Of course they did. Of course they did. And why did they choose them? What are the qualifications that Kenneth Copeland and Quindarrius Zachary both had when it really comes down to it? They're two people that are willing to lie on others to get themselves out of trouble. That was one qualification that they had. And two, they are two people that happened to put themselves in situations, serious situations, that would require them to lie on others to get themselves out of trouble. Those were their two qualifications. And the state said, sounds good. We'll sign you up. You're our witnesses. You're no longer on this indictment. Let's talk about Kenneth Copeland's credibility. So use the same tests you do for those quote-unquote expert witnesses. What's his bias, his motive? How's he come across on the stand? What are his motivations? Well, we know he really hates jail. That was clear. I submit to you that it seems that not only does he hate jail, but he almost has a mental disorder about, he literally said, I'd rather die than go to Rice Street. That's extreme. He's told us, I would do anything to stay out of jail. I would lie on anyone to get myself out of trouble. He has his own term for what he does, the finesse. He really hates jail. What else do we know about Kenneth Copeland? Well, we know about, and I'm going to ask y'all to think back and remember this when he was on the stand, a case, 21 CP 197618, State of Georgia versus Kenneth Copeland. Remember that? When he was actually in jail, and he picked up another charge because he claimed that a jail worker attacked him and sprayed him with OC spray for no good cause. And he brought charges, or tried to bring charges, against this poor jail worker. What do we know? The surveillance from the jail was pulled. The investigators looked at it, as they should. Even Kenneth Copeland, a known liar, when he makes allegations against the police, yes, it should be looked into. And it was. And what did they find? No OC spray was emitted. In fact, the officer that was accused didn't even have OC spray on them at the time. So what happened to Kenneth Copeland in that case? Well, he was charged with false statement and false report of a crime, 2 felonies, excuse me. So as a result of his lie, he gets charged with these 2 felonies, false statement and false report of a crime. And it's pending, and it's pending, and it's pending. Then all of a sudden, as this case is ramping up, and Mr. Copeland's going to have to take the stand and be asked about his pending charges and his prior lies, all of a sudden, on January 18th, 2024, Fonnie Willis and her employee, Kenneth Hutcherson, quietly dismissed the case against Kenneth Copeland, the case of false statement, a case of false report of a crime. Why did they do it, according to that sheet? Was it, oh, we actually looked at the video again and it actually supported Kenneth Copeland? No. Was it the victim didn't want to prosecute? No. Prosecutorial discretion. They decided it was in their best interest to dismiss that case against Kenneth Copeland before he testified. Remember I told Kenneth Copeland about it? Thought he was going to get up and hug me. He said, my case is dismissed? Yep, sure was. State took care of you. You're not on this indictment either. Kenneth Copeland's a liar. He's a proven liar. And let's talk about his prior statements he made, because we know on June 10, 2015 is when he said Demekion Garlington gave him certain information and that Shannon Stillwell was one of the people responsible for killing Donovan Thomas. Demekion told him at the McDonald's. That's what Kenneth Copeland said on June 10, 2015. Well, we learned that Kenneth Copeland actually met with the police in 2015 4 times prior to that June 10, 2015 interview. We learned that he met with Investigator Thorpe on January 11th. Now, mind you, all these meetings, presumably, if it were true, Kenneth Copeland would have that knowledge of what Demekion Garlington said to him for all these meetings. January 11, 2015, he goes in to talk to Thorpe. Doesn't say anything about Demekion Garlington telling him that Shannon Stillwell is involved in Donovan Thomas's murder. Places himself at the Green Store, which is less than a minute away from the scene of the Donovan Thomas murder. And he's asked about, specifically by Detective Thorpe, if he's ever rented or driven an Infiniti. And what does Kenneth Copeland say? No, never. Denies it completely. That's on January 11th. That's the night going into the morning after of the Donovan Thomas homicide. And of course, we know that's a lie because Kenneth Copeland was in the Infiniti on the night of January 9th with Quindarrius Zachary. So he lies right off the bat to Detective Thorpe. January 28th, he meets with Thorpe, Dennis, and Gaither. Again, never mentions this supposed statement by Demekion Garlington about Shannon Stillwell being involved. In fact, he's asked specifically who he thought killed Donovan Thomas. He mentions his friend Doc and goes back and forth about whether Doc could have done it or not. He shares a theory about Donovan Thomas running off with someone's drugs. He shares a theory about Kelvin Watts robbing people and Donovan Thomas being caught in that situation. And he's also asked on January 28th about a rumor that he stole Donovan Thomas's chain. And what's he say? Oh no, I didn't do that. Someone else apparently stole Donovan Thomas' chain, and they brought it to me, and I realized it was Donovan Thomas' stuff, and I returned it. I don't have any problems with Donovan Thomas. Me and Donovan Thomas are cool. He also said that on the 11th. So then we go to February 20th, the third statement he gave. Again, never mentions anything about what Demekion Garlington supposedly told him. And Curry, investigator Curry, asked him about the Donovan Thomas case. Doesn't know anything. And then on February 21st, with Gaither and Thorpe, he's again asked about the Donovan Thomas case. Never mentions, oh, Demekion Garlington at the McDonald's told me that Shannon Stillwell did it. Again, he's asked about Donovan Thomas's chain, and it's another lie. Oh, well, someone brought it to me. He sticks with that lie. Lie after lie after lie. Denying beef with Donovan Thomas, denying stealing Donovan Thomas's chain, denying ever being in an infinity. Those are the statements that Kenneth Copeland gave leading up to June 10, 2015. Could you put on page 33, Mr. Kokomo? So, this is a picture from June 10, 2015 that's in evidence, and it is misleading. It shows Mr. Copeland wearing street clothes, civilian clothes, not a blue jumpsuit, but let's not get confused, let's not get it twisted. On June 10, 2015, Kenneth Copeland, for the first time, was headed to jail for serious charges. That's what's different about this interview. He was headed to Rice Street. He had a gun charge from the Dunbar Rec Center. Remember when he brought the stick into the rec center and left it on the bleachers? He had just been arrested on that warrant from when he did that. And when they arrested him on the warrant, they came into his girlfriend, Deshawn Quarterman's apartment. And what did they find? They find another gun, a stolen Smith & Wesson, in Deshawn's kitchen. And they find a stolen MacBook in Deshawn's apartment. And they find stolen IDs and stolen property in Deshawn's car. And so now we got 2 guns, stolen property. Oh, and then the police are saying, oh, this stolen property, it's linked to auto breakings that have happened in your neighborhood. So he's got guns, and he's got a federal agent in there as well, Agent Cunningham, who's talking about these cases going federal. He's got a lot going on. And promises are made. Well, let's talk about the threats first. And all these officers say, oh, I wouldn't threaten him. I wouldn't threaten him. I threatened no bodily harm on him. I'm going to tell you. Max Schardt said this here today. Y'all threaten to punch me in the face anytime. But don't threaten to put me in prison for 25 years, no parole. That's a real threat that gets my attention. You can punch me. But the state and the police act like statements that Agent Cunningham made, like, you're an armed career criminal. We got you dead to rights. You're facing 15 plus 10. That's 25. No parole. You're not going to get out till you're 48. And that's not even including the conspiracies. You won't see your children till you're 48. That's a threat. That's a lot more bigger threat than I'm going to punch you in the face or we're going to beat you until you confess. That's a threat. What else do they say? It's totally up to you if these charges go federal or not. You have to help yourself. I'm going to call the U.S. attorney, and they're going to ask me, what did he do to help himself? You see what goes on here? This isn't an accident. This is the playbook. Get the liar, get him jammed up, threaten him, tell him he's not going to see his kids again until he's 48, and then, oh, but maybe we can do something for you. You just got to give us what we want. And yes, that was enough to make self-admitted liar, self-admitted finesser, a person who fully admits that he would lie on anyone to get out of jail, to stay out of jail, to get out of trouble, that was enough to coax him to make up a story about Shannon Stillwell and others. And that was actually enough to put his plan in motion because he knew someone was going to have to back up his story. And that was enough to have him reach out to Demekion Garlington and try to get Demekion Garlington to go out and go on with the story. Which, of course, Mr. Copeland told us he's no longer friends with Mr. Garlington because Mr. Garlington would not go along with that story. Or he's upset with Mr. Garlington because Mr. Garlington would not go along with that story. Maybe you say, Max, we get it. He's a liar. He was jammed up. But maybe this threat of prosecution was what was needed to bring out the truth. Maybe he was being truthful on June 10, 2015. Well, let's think about what else he said on June 10, 2015. Remember when they were talking about those auto breakings that they suspected him of? And said, you're going to have to answer these auto breakings. Why do you have all this property and these cars? We know you're involved. Remember what he said? Nah. That was Lil Mike and Quez that did them. Remember the detectives? They looked at each other, Lil Mike and Quez, Lil Mike and Quez. But what did we learn in the cross-examination of Kenneth Copeland? Little Mike and Quez, not only did they not do the auto breakings that Kenneth Copeland claimed they did on June 10, 2015, Little Mike and Quez, they don't exist. He made them up on the spot on June 10th of 2015. So my answer to you, if you think, oh, this pressure was needed to get Kenneth Copeland to finally be truthful, nope. He was lying. He made up people that didn't exist in this very statement that the state wants you to take as truthful from one of the biggest liars we've ever seen in our lives. Mr. Kokomo, if you could play what's on page 35. And what did Kenneth Copeland say on a call from the Fayette County Jail on December 21st, 2022, on a recorded call that Attorney Steele brought out?
First thing I did, I got into it. I lied on to it because, you know, I mean, I found out that he I can't say that, I can't say that on the phone, but, you know what I mean? It's some shit happened between me and him back then. And just so happened I got locked up the next day. You feel me?
He admitted. He said, I lied on Thug. The very same interview, he was saying all sorts of things about Thug. He admitted he was lying. He was making stuff up to get himself out of trouble, to get out of his situation. And he got caught in a recorded line saying as much. Ladies and gentlemen, Detective Thorpe fell for the finesse. Kenneth Copeland said it was easy. Lieutenant Gaither fell for the finesse. The police report fell for the police department fell for the finesse. Kenneth Copeland got up on the stand and explained the finesse to you, to your faces. We know better than to fall for Kenneth Copeland's finesse. We know better than to just accept his words. Mr. Kokomo, if you could put on page 36. This is the other state's witness, the other witness that they chose to bring in front of you, Quindarrius Zachary. And yes, he's wearing the jail blues, and he had every reason to lie to get himself out of trouble. First of all, what did Quindarrius Zachary say at trial? He admitted that he lied on Shannon in 2 prior statements. One August 5th, 2015 to Lieutenant Gaither, and then one in a proffer session on March 3rd of 2017. And he also admitted on cross-examination that even those 2 statements, those 2 lies he told about Shannon Stillwell, were not even consistent with each other. But none of the police seemed to mind. None of the prosecutors seemed to mind. Why? Remember his lie? His lie was, oh, the night of the Donovan Thomas killing, Shannon Stillwell confessed to me at Jeffrey Williams' condo. And then he also went on to lie about Shannon Stillwell on this August 5th, 2015 statement, lied about Shannon Stillwell's involvement in really a bunch of other cases. Cases that Shannon Stillwell has never been charged with. He just lied on Shannon. And he admitted his motivation for lying on Shannon. He admitted that he knew, or he was under the belief, that when he talked to the police, when he talked to Lieutenant Gaither, first of all, he needed to get bond. He had been locked up for about 7 days. His family had been calling Gaither. We heard about that. Begging her to go up and talk to him. What was the urgency? Well, we didn't get into details, but we learned that Mr. Zachary has a serious illness. A serious illness that he wasn't going to fare well at Rice Street under those conditions. So he needed to get out. So he has people calling Gaither, come see me, I want to talk to you. And then he also has the motivation of the April 28, 2015 case, which he was facing at this time. He told you, I was under the impression, and I didn't do the math, this may be right, this may be wrong, but this was his impression, that he was facing something like 185 years. Yeah, that's pretty good motivation to lie. And then he was also concerned because he got caught with a gun on May 7, 2015, that he knew was ballistically linked to other crimes. So that was a reason for him to lie. And finally, why Shannon? Because he wanted to get back at Demekion Garlington, because Demekion had told the police about the April 28, 2015 incident. And he figured blaming Shannon for things was a way to get back at Demekion, because at that time, Demekion and Shannon were close friends. So those were his motivations. Let's talk about the statements he gave. We heard about Investigator Gaither being called repeatedly to go down there and talk to him on August 5th, 2015. And she said, okay. Remember, he wanted to talk about other stuff. He didn't want to talk about his case. He wanted to immediately get to the point where he's telling lies on other people to get bond or get released, get consideration. And Gaither, to her credit, said, no, we got to talk about your case first. Let's talk about April 28, 2015. And what he said? I wasn't there. I wasn't there. The only reason I know about it is because Demekion Garlington told me the next day. So immediately, he's lying to the police, saying he wasn't there, which of course we know he was there. Lieutenant Gaither knows he was there. But what's his explanation? It's odd. It's interesting. It seems to be a recurring theme. I wasn't there, but... And where did he say was also? I was at home because I'm always sick, right? I was at home. I'm always sick. I wasn't there. And the only reason I know about this is because Demekion Garlington the next day confessed to me. Seeing a pattern?